Okay, so today it's birds. It's the Yellowhammer's Nest by Clare. So I was kind of browsing through poems and I came across this one. I really liked it. Then I realized afterwards, that we already had one poem by Clare before, with autumn and gossamers flying, if you remember. So he's a really amazing poet when it comes to nature. So let's have a look at it. I think it should be bridge, because brig doesn't really make much sense. Just by the wooden bridge, a bird flew up, freed by the cowboy as he scrambled down to reach a misty dewberry. Let us stoop and seek its nest. The brook we need not dread, 'tis scarcely deep enough a bee to drown. So it sings harmless over its pebbly bed. Aye, here it is, stuck close beside the bank, beneath the bunch of grass that spindles rank, its husk seeds tall and high. 'Tis rudely planted of bleached stubbles and the withered fare that last year's harvest left upon the land, like thinly with the horse's sable hair. 5 eggs, pen scribbled over with ink their shells, resembling writing scrolls with which the fancy reads as nature's poesy and pastoral spells. They are the Yellowhammers, and should dwells most poet-like where brooks and flowery weeds, as sweet as Castaly to fancy sings, and that old molehill like as Parnassus hill, on which her partner happily sits and dreams over all her joys of song. So live it still, a happy home of sunshine, flowers, and streams. Yet, in the sweetest places cometh ill, a noisome weed that burdens every soil, where snakes unknown with chill and deadly coil to watch such nests and seize the hapless young. Like as though the plough became a guest, living in a houseless home, a ruined nest, and mournful hath the little warbler sung, when such like woes hath rent its little breast. What is your comment?
Well, I don't know. There's a bit too much for me. I mean, it isn't heavy in terms of sound. It isn't heavy in terms of good poetry. But if I try to just read it as you did, it's a bit heavy in terms of, well, I would even say hard to understand, because I think I get the gist out of it, and then I'm not really sure. Maybe there's something that really prevents me from getting the idea fully.
Okay, let's kind of go through it just briefly to see what is weird. So the first part is we'll look at the nest. A boy wants to get some dewberry, which is kind of like blackberry, just really small. He wants to get some, and it's close to the ground, so he wants to get some berries, and he frightens a bird. And the author, the narrator, wants to see what is there. And they go there, and they find the nest. He finds the nest, the narrator finds the nest, which is rudely planted of bleached stubbles. And then we look into the nest, and we see 5 eggs, which look really nice. And we look at the eggs, we look at the birds, and they're all nice and happy and dreamy. And then he says, well, they look all happy now, but don't think that it will last. There's always danger maybe a snake will come, maybe, we don't know, but maybe a snake will come and eat the eggs, and then the birds will be happy no more. That's what it says, in 2 words.
Okay.
Was it all the same as your impression?
Well, maybe, just because my impression wasn't really, wasn't a clear impression. It was sort of muddled or something.
Mm-hmm. Do we know to talk about any words in here specifically?
Well, I don't really think so. Maybe as we go through each line, you might help with some of these, but otherwise I think it's fine. And thank you for this brief summary.
So how do you feel about it? Apart from it being poetic in the sense that not like normal language. What about the story?
Well, this is a typical story, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We sometimes see harmony and peace, and that it's all harmonious and peaceful, and that's going to continue. But just the way a bird may be frightened by summon, we know that all our there's something which is only stable because we are very lucky to have something stable and permanent. It's not supposed to be stable and permanent. It's supposed to be moving, and sometimes the direction, the dynamics takes it to something which we might find threatening or at least unpleasant. And as everyone who treasures his or her life walks around just busy doing something, we do not necessarily understand that we are only capable of doing that because we are very lucky. And nothing really prevents us from being crippled. Nothing really prevents us from an accident that will take our lives, or nothing prevents us from some material misery, so to speak. Nothing prevents us from somebody invading our homes, just the way a snake might. Nothing prevents us from. Also, it just all means, I don't really think it means be the beware of the world. It's a cruel world, although it very often is a cruel. I think what John Clare was trying to say was just remember how happy you are. Remember all the gifts you are given. Something like that.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So, why the Yellowhammer? Why not some other bird?
To that I can't answer. I must admit that I've looked the word up in a dictionary, and I now know the Russian translation, which didn't help any because I can't visualize this
You can.
this bird.
You can. It's in the name, Yellowhammer. So even if you don't know the bird, you still can see it because it's in the name.
Okay. So it's like yellow, and there's something, because the Russian. I'm sorry, I'll have to do something.
No problem.
find it somewhere. So I'm not really sure, but the Russian translation talks about barley or something. The English word tells us there's a hammer, and something, maybe a hammer, maybe something else is yellow. But again, how do you visualize?
Well, it's yellow.
Is it a sort of?
It's a small yellow bird.
Yellow. Okay.
It's I would say about the size of a sparrow or a tit or a wagtail, maybe. It's not big. It's small and it's really bright red, with a little bit like brownish, like a sparrow, just really yellow. You have the word yellow in the text. Like we say, if you come to the British poetry, the English poetry, the British poetry, then you do know your birds, you do know your plants, and the reader knows the birds, the reader knows the plants. So nobody has any problem with seeing it. It's not a rare bird; it's a common bird. It lives like everywhere, more or less. But even if you don't know, you still have the word yellow, and how does it make you feel when you have something yellow and it's a bird?
Well, it might make me happy, because as someone who lives in a big city, I don't usually see lots of birds, and when I do see them, they are often grey, like most of the pigeons who live here, or they are greyish, brownish, like the sparrows. But the sparrows seem to be very rare these days. So you
noticed it too. I've been wondering if it was just me and around my place, but you notice it too. We have less sparrows than before. Because they used to teem on the ground. You look at the ground and it's like covered with sparrows, like a carpet. And now, where are they? I know a bush or two where they live, but where are they? Then again, there are lots of birds where I live here in Moscow, and just in the park. I have lots and lots and lots of different birds. Then you don't have just sparrows and pigeons.
Yeah.
If you look more closely, you have lots of birds. You have blackbirds. You have chaffinches, lots and lots of chaffinches, goldfinches. Then there are jays, and there are tits, all sorts of tits, and wagtails, and really quite a lot. We have woodpeckers here. We have I'm not sure what kind of a bird, a big predator bird, maybe a kestrel or a merlin kind of thing. So we really do have a lot of birds, all those tiny little birds, different names. They're all here, if you care to look. I've seen a magpie recently. I don't see many magpies in the city, but so I don't know. There are more birds than meet the eye. But anyway, we have a small yellow bird. So how do we feel about it? It's really tiny and it's really bright. So I think one of the reactions to it, images, feelings, is fragile happiness. Kindness and happiness. It is bright, it's happy, but it's really, really fragile. It cannot defend itself. It's gentle, which makes it more precious. So what do you think? Do you think that if somebody is happy, they must be able to turn really strong and angry and defend themselves if something happens? Or is it better if they just stay happy but defenseless?
Well, it's true that our happiness is, or at least may be, very fragile. Of course, there are people who say we are never happy. There are people who say that this is a transient thing, so it comes and goes, like exactly the way unhappiness comes and goes too. And well, as far as this bird is concerned, it is a sort of a symbol, a sign of happiness, and it's small, it's bright, it's fragile, but also there's, as far as I understand, these small birds are often very energetic creatures.
They have to be.
Sparrows are full of grace and energy, and they are funny to look at. So this is obviously true for this bird also, and that just brings smiles on our faces, just as the way we see it. So there's the fact that it is small is not does not necessarily mean that we'll have to be afraid of its losing its life or something.
Oh, we're talking about the poem, and that's what happens in the poem. Yeah. In the poem, they're helpless when the snake comes and basically kills the babies. They can do nothing. Though I guess you can be strong and happy at the same time. It's logical. If you're happy, if you're truly happy, if you're not pretending to be happy, if you're happy not because of things or people, but you're just naturally happy, then how can you be unhappy? How can you be made unhappy? Because it comes from inside. Well, anyway.
Because you discussed happiness. What do you think? Is it really possible to do what you're often, not you personally, but what we are often advised to do? Just pretend we're happy, fake it until you make it, something like that. Do you think it's something that really works, or it's something that really brings genuine happiness if such a thing exists?
Oh, it could be handy. It could be handy because anyway, whatever we do, first we create an image, and then we make ourselves into that image to come. Like, oh, I want to be a great musician. I don't want to be a great musician. I see myself as a great musician, and then I take steps to be it, for instance. Because, again, what do I really want and what do I think I want could be two different things. I may think I want to be a, great musician, but I don't really want it. So I don't practice hard enough to make it, because I don't really want it. Maybe I really want to be a cook, for instance, or something else, a gardener. And I put my energy into that. Maybe I don't notice it, maybe I don't think it's important, but that's what I do and not what I think I do. I have an image, but if it's not real, if that's not what I really want to do, it will just stay an image. And as for happiness, I guess it might work, but I also guess it needs a teacher. I guess a technique like that, you do need a teacher, because otherwise you may just get lost a bit. You may think you are there, but you're just pretending. And you wouldn't know because you're not looking from outside, you're looking from inside, and you're just pretending, and you forget you're just pretending. And then you'll have a big problem because your unhappiness will still be there. So I guess it must be a part of the discipline. A part of the discipline is to deal with your so-called unhappiness, and the other part of the discipline is moving toward your happiness. Because if you're just pretending to be happy but you have some issues, I don't know, with a family or with your work or something else, then you won't be happy, you'll never be happy. You have to make peace with that first, I guess. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so be like birds. Be happy. Okay, so let's have a look. Just by the wooden bridge, a bird flew up. Freed by the cowboys, he scrambled down to reach Mr. Dewberry. So if we look at the whole poem, you may notice it's just 3 sentences. 3 really big, long sentences. So we may say there are 3 parts to the poem. So how do we enter the poem? What do the first line give us, tell us, make us feel?
Well, there's a sort of a landscape characterized, so to say, by the bridge. And again, if I am an English language teacher, I would immediately jump on the word the wooden bridge. So it's known to, as the poet thinks we can immediately visualize it. It's a bridge that is
specific,
well known to us. It's the wooden bridge. It's a specific bridge, and it's a scene that is easily to imagine. Unlike the bird, which is a bird. So we see something static, the bridge, which has probably been there for a very long time.
We don't know.
And this
could be a new
bridge. We don't know, but at least the bridge, yes, it might be new, but it's supposed to be quite stable. That's probably an important thing about the bridge. It doesn't necessarily move and end up somewhere in the river. And then there's something really dynamic that makes a splash of some sort that puts an end to this stillness. Again, a wooden bridge. I am imagining something like that now, and I do think that it might be a beautiful and harmonious picture, and then something interrupts that harmony. A bird flies up.
Yeah, so it's a wooden bridge. It's not like made of metal or something, or concrete. So again, it's a part of nature here. It's soft. Yeah, and we don't see the bird because we are looking from a side, from a distance. So we have connections. We have the horizontal connection, which is the bridge, connecting, let's say, left and right. And we have a bird flew up, and we have up and down. So here we have the directions. So a bridge is obviously, bridges are cool and important because they connect different realities, one side and the other. So maybe here we connect the human reality and the bird reality, maybe.
Also, I think as we look at the bridges the way we are, it's often I do think that there are pictures depicting the countryside, English countryside or Russian countryside, and all of these, not all of these, but many of these may depict a bridge. So again, this is something that we typically associate with the countryside, and it probably provokes other associations. Calm, peace, peaceful, harmonious, not threatening, and so on.
Maybe.
And a bird flies up. Again, it's natural for a bird to fly, but here there's an interruption, and in the first line we don't know yet what makes the bird flow up.
Well, we do know in the second line, though. So
well, we do know in the second.
we know it's near. It's not a wild place. It's not somewhere where you need to be an experienced hiker to get to, apparently. Because if you have a bridge, then people are walking there all the time. They use the bridge. Freed by the cowboy. So we have the human person immediately. Freed by the cowboys, he scrambled down to reach the misty dewberry. How about the cowboy? Why do we put the cowboy into the bird?
Well, first of all, because it is, and he is the one who is interrupting this supposedly harmonious scenery, because the cowboy is, well, he is human. He does what many human beings do, interrupting the normal ways of nature. Although you can always argue whether a human is also a part of nature. But cowboys are also, well, cowboys obviously...
Okay, do you imagine a cowboy as in a Western film, or do you imagine cowboy as a boy who looks after cows?
Well, of course, for me, the word cowboy, which I see here, immediately brings this these American images. But I know that it's not an American poem, as far as I understand. And that's why I have to...
It's just, what does he do?
My...
What does he do?
Yeah.
He just wants to get some berries. It's not what your Western cowboy does. So it's really a boy who looks after cows, which again puts us into a rural landscape. We know it's not the city. We know it's somewhere in the country.
And again, you might say, because he is a cowboy, two words, of which one belongs to the human world, but the other still belongs to the world of nature, the world of nature, the natural world. So he's not sort of, and his idea was to destroy the birds, not to destroy the bridge. His idea is just to have something, again, something really natural, to have something in terms of have a belly or two.
Yeah.
So again, it is an interruption, but to a very large extent, it remains within the boundaries of what is natural and peaceful. He is not there trying to kill birds. He is not. He is not depicted as a violent teenager. Something. It's still quite peaceful. So although there's a sort of interruption, it's the stillness and the movement are also more or less harmonious.
Mm-hmm. And you may notice all the movement. You may see how a bird flew up and he scrambled down. So we are moving up, we are moving down, which is very nice. Very beautiful balance here. And a bird goes up and the human goes down. Interestingly. Maybe it's just to give us more space, more motion, make it more into action and less static, maybe. Again, a bird flew up and he scrambled down. Scrambled down is, what kind of movement is it? How would you describe it?
Well, as far as I understand, it's isn't there something awkward about it?
Yeah. Yeah. So a bird is small, it can just fly up. And he is big for the world of the birds, so he just scrambled down. And what is it? Was it scrambled? It's like without much respect, or maybe he's in a hurry, or maybe he's just clumsy, like scrambled eggs, you know. Or maybe it's hard for him to get there. Yeah. And what does he want? The misty.
Misty, dewberry. And as far as your description goes, they are really small berries.
Not really small. They're smaller than brambles.
Smaller than... Okay. They are smaller, so unless you are careful, you might end up with scrambled berries in your hand instead of something you can eat.
Well,
So
I don't know. I think it's more like about mist and dew. Misty dewberry. So we have mist and we have dew and we have berries. So all of that is like magical. He's collecting dew, in a sense. And it's misty, like mystical. Yeah. Because it could be any kind of berry, but it decides to be dewberry. And again, dew is really like poetic and romantic and like little diamonds.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's looking, on one hand he's looking for some nice berries, on another hand he's looking for another dimension, in a sense, the fairy dimension. Because mist and dew is how you get to the fairies. Now what? Let us stoop and seek its nest. Cowboy's nest. So, us, the narrator and you. You are a part of that poem. You're not looking at it from a side, you're inside it. And the narrator literally holds you by your hand and tells you to look. Let us stoop. So stoop, on one hand, like stop. Yeah, you need to pause. You need to hold your horses for a second or two to see what is really around you. Because if you're just in a hurry all the time, you're not seeing much. So let us stop and let us stoop. Again, stoop, like going down, bending, looking.
Bending, and because you are bending, you make yourself a bit more humble than
Mm-hmm.
you were just
Mm-hmm.
a moment
Yeah.
ago.
Mm-hmm.
In order to see, you have to stop and you have to stoop
Mm-hmm.
to sort of try to be at least partially a member of this bird's world, as you said.
Yeah, it's like you make yourself
so-
smaller in a sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, if you are very busy, if you are a businessman or woman, you probably you're likely to respond no to this invitation to stop, look down, stoop, and see something that is not immediately obvious. So again, by inviting us to look at the bird's nest, the poet already assumes, he already knows that we are the sort of readers, the sort of people who will follow his lead, who will do what he offers us to do, who are more interested in looking at this tiny, well, not tiny, but the small things which are probably invisible to any sort of
Well,
person.
maybe, or maybe it is precisely the poet's job to take us where we would not go by ourselves, to show us something which is maybe horrible, maybe disgusting, but which we need to know, unpleasant, or something that we don't care to look at. So it's not like we are eager to follow, it's his art of storytelling makes us follow because he hooks us with his words, his rhythm, his sounds. If you just listen to the sounds, scramble down to reach the misty dewberry, let us stoop, seek brook, dread. You can see how the sounds are like a little brook themselves. So you can't stop reading it because there's no stop. There are only 3 full stops in the poem, so you can't stop because it's flowing. It's flowing, flowing, flowing. It takes you with it. Stoop and seek, brook and dread, need not dread. And of course now we have water, we have wood, we have cows, we have dew, we have berries, we have birds. We have a very nice landscape. It's a nice place to be in. Fresh and welcoming. The brook we need not dread. It is scarcely deep enough a bee to drown. Which is a beautiful description. Now we have bees as well. And again we are shrinking, we are making ourselves really small. Now that we talk about bees, we have a bee world, not even a bird world. Yeah, we make ourselves really, really tiny. It is scarcely deep enough a bee to drown. So we see the bird is small, we make ourselves small to enter this reality, this world. And it's deep, but it's scarcely deep enough to be to drown. And again we have the sounds, brook and dread and deep and bee and drown. So it's one of those spell poems which you do need to say, you need to feel it on your tongue, you need to hear it. You need to feel the sound going through you. So it sings harmless over its pebbly bed.
it is, the bird is harmless. And we also know that no harm.
Who sings harmless? So the poem is about the bird, and when you say sings harmless, you kind of suggest that it would be about the bird, but if you read the poem, actually, it's the brook, or it's pebbly bed.
Okay, yeah.
So the brook is really tiny, and it's harmless, and it's singing like a bird.
Where it goes. Okay.
So we have a sense of security. There's a sense of security. We have word harmless. We need not dread. The bird needs not dread. The brook sings harmlessly over its pebbly bed. And now we have pebbles, and we have the idea of a bed, which is like the nest, the bed, riverbed, but also a bed where you can sleep. Pebbly, pebbly, pebbly. Again, the music. Pebbly bed, pebbly bed, pebbly bed. You can hear it.
Yeah.
And again, pebbles are tiny. They're not big. Mm-hmm.
And tiny, and you can also imagine getting hold of some of the pebbles, having them in your hand, and then they also produce a sort of a pleasant sound, and they also produce a sort of a pleasant, what's the word for that? A pleasant, they are pleasant to touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're nice, they're smooth. It's all a very nice, pleasant place. Harmless, happy, singing, not scary. Here it is. It is the nest. Yeah? Let us stoop and seek its nest. Here it is. Stuck close beside the bank, beneath the bunch of grass, its spindles rank, its husk seeds tall and high. It is rudely plant of bleached stubbles and the withered fare that last year's harvest left upon the land, lined thinly with the horse's sable hair. So now we look down, we come down, we look at the ground from our big human height. We stoop, we go down, 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 down. Now we are close to the ground. Now we can see the nest beside the bank, beneath the bunch of grass. So it's kind of hidden or sheltered. We have an extra shelter. On one hand, it's sheltered by the bank, then it's sheltered by grass, which is tall and high. It wouldn't be tall and high for us, but it is tall and high for the bird. So we are now in the bird world, where we are tiny, the bird is tiny, and the grass is tall and high. It is rudely planned of bleached stubbles and the withered fare that last year's harvest left upon the land. So why rudely planned? Why is it not elegant?
Maybe because it's not as elegant as a human home. Maybe it's not as elegant as a human bed. Again, the word bed being mentioned just a few lines before. And it uses things which, of course, no human can possibly think of using to kind of bleached stubbles with, so there's something rude, but probably not necessarily rude in terms it's negative. It's rude in terms it's close to nature.
Mm-hmm. Do you know where the word rude comes from?
No, I don't.
So it comes from rural. The idea rude is red. Rude, red.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea is that people who live in the countryside have red faces because they're out in the sun and the weather, as opposed to white, pale-faced city dwellers, people of the town. Yeah, so it started like, oh, you're rude, means you have a red face, meaning you are from the countryside, meaning you're not intelligent. And then that became rude, like negative, like, oh, you're so rude. Yeah, so rude, rudely, is like rural. And maybe what he says here is, it might not be elegant, but it's still very much beautiful. And maybe it's more beautiful because it's rudely planned. Because they use what they can use and they make something amazing out of it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and again, at least back in the first half of the 19th century, as he was writing that, he probably had this townsfolk, this intelligent, well-educated, or at least educated people in mind as his audience, instead of country folk who might not be able to read, which deprives them of the opportunity to read John Clare's poems. So he's probably inviting us, people, as you say, city dwellers, to look into something that we don't know, we do not, we might misunderstand. And what he's saying is, yes, it might look rude and rustic to you, but there's beauty in it. It's if you can't see the beauty of it, it's not because it's not beautiful, it's because you don't know much about what's beautiful and what's not.
Yeah, in which case he might be also talking about people who live in the country in general.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's like,
Because
oh, you
they're
think
close to
they
nature,
live
they are
rudely,
part of-
well, you just don't see it. The beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You see the beauty. It appears when you look at it. It is rudely planned, but we stop and we look at it because it's amazing. It's a whole home of bleached stubbles and the withered fare that last year's harvest left upon the land. So now we have the details, we can see it really close, we can see what it's made of. And we can see that it's made of old things, not bright things, but some leftovers from last year's harvest. So again, you think, oh, it's just some leftovers, who needs it? It's just rubbish. But it's not rubbish for the birds. The birds turn it into their home. Yeah. So you may think it's just something old and withered, but you just don't know what to do with it. You don't know how to use it. And he can see the beauty, and the birds can see what they can do with it and make it beautiful again. Last year's harvest left upon the land. Again, why last year's harvest? Oh, something old maybe. Last year, from the past.
Yeah. Last year's snow.
Aligned thinly with the horse's sable hair. Again, more detail.
Yeah, and delicate detail like that.
Oh, have you seen horses' hair?
Well, I've seen horses, and does it mean I've seen horses' hair?
Oh, maybe if you paid attention. Because the horses' hair, they're not delicate. Or they're quite hard.
Okay.
They're a bit like wires. So sable hair. Thinly. But you look close and you can see thin lines of hair in it. And now we have horses here as well. So we have cows, we have horses. The place is really very much alive. And again, when we say cows and horses, we also imply humans, because we don't mean wild horses or wild cows. Mm-hmm.
And I might be gravely mistaken, but I do think that horsehair is used, or was used, in producing human clothing. They use linings of horsehair to make it a bit more, to make it look more natural on somebody's bodies. And
I don't know about that, because it's really hard. The horses' hair, they're really hard. But we do use horses' hair for stuffing, like for chairs. You can put it in a chair, for instance.
So, which again means that the birds are just as smart as we humans, because we also discovered a way to use horsehair, but to birds it comes naturally.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is really plant of bleached stubbles and the withered fare that last year's harvest left upon the land, lined thin with the horse's sable hair. So again, we kind of connect different realities: human, horse, plant, harvest, birds. Yeah, so they're interweaving in the nest. They all come together and hold together and make something new in the nest. Okay, so that was the first phrase, coming from just by the wooden bridge and to that point. So it's quite a big scene, because we start from looking from afar. We just see some bird. We're not sure what kind of bird it is, even. And then we look closer and closer and closer, and finally we are so close we can see horse's hair in the nest, which you wouldn't be able to see from afar, obviously. And we can see time, we can see last year's harvest, we can see time. Okay, now the second phrase, the second part. Now we look not at the nest, but at what is inside the nest. 5 eggs, pen scribbled over with ink their shells, resembling writing scrolls which fancy reads as nature's poesy and pastoral spells. They are the Yellowhammers, and she dwells most poet-like where brooks and flowery weeds as sweet as castly to fancy seems, and that old molehill like as Parnassus Hill, on which her partner happily sits and dreams over all her joys of song. So leave it still, a happy home of sunshine, flowers, and streams. So now we look, and now we see the eggs. 5 eggs, which is like a happy nest with not 1 or 2, but 5 eggs. And then pen scribbled or with ink their shells, resembling writing scrolls which fancy reads as nature's poesy and pastoral spells.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the egg, they're kind of bluish, I think, and they do have those kind of spots or scribbles on them.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So why describe them in such a way?
first, he says writing. Writing is something people do. Writing is not what they think birds do. And they do it here. So it takes us by surprise. Then he says pen scribbled. And of course, at that time, pens were not these plastic things we often use today to write. Pens were made of bird's feather. So this serves, or at least might serve, as a connection between the world of the bird and the world of us, the humans. And again, it shows us that as we think of these two worlds, they don't necessarily have to be in opposition to each other. They might complement each other. We might see in a bird's world, in a bird's universe, something that we can appreciate, or maybe even copy, something that is beautiful and intricate.
Or maybe it's how we project ourselves at whatever we can see. Just our humanness on what is not human, because that's the only way we can perceive it. That's the only tool we have to perceive the reality, the human vision. We can't possibly see it in a bird vision or mouse vision, because then you would have to be a bird or a mouse, then you would not remember being human. Even if you do turn back, you would not be able to describe it, because all the tools, all the means would be left in the bird reality, the mouse reality. So all we can do is transform what we see into the human reality, the human vision, which might be really different from what it really is. But still, here the poet becomes a bird, or a bird becomes a poet. The poet or the bird, which is the same here, the poet is happy in nature. It's spells, it's poesy. Poetry is natural. Poetry comes naturally. It's like one of the forces, one of the natural forces. I believe it is. I believe we have a natural force of poetry, like we have electricity, and we have poetry too. So you may write your poems with a pen, or you may write your poem with your life, basically. So a bird's poem doesn't have to have words. A bird's poem could be a nest with eggs in it. And not because they have spots on the shells, but because there is the poetry of life, there is the poetry of being, which we need to remember. Because if you just live from a day to a day, then what's the point of it? Your life is a poem, so just tell it. 5 eggs, pen scribbled over with ink their shells. Again, you may think, is it real ink? Has someone been writing on these eggs? That's not likely. What's going on here? Resembling writing, scrolls which fancy reads as nature's poesy and pastoral spells. No, it's just natural ink, natural poetry. We have fancy or fantasy here. So we are in a misty dew, dreamy world of poetry. And maybe a poet is like an egg, and he has a kind of a shell around him which is scribbled with ink, maybe. Nature's poesy and pastoral spells. So poesy and spells, here we know it's the same, because poetry is spells are poetic. They are the Yellowhammers. So basically we just have it one time in the poem where we say the name of the bird, Yellowhammer. But we know it's Yellowhammer because we have it in the title, so he doesn't have to repeat it. A bird flew up, we know it's Yellowhammer. They are the Yellowhammers, just in case we lost somewhere the title, so that we know. They are the Yellowhammers, and she dwells, most poet-like, the brooks and flower weeds, as we discussed the fancy scenes. Now we have Yellowhammer, and the Yellowhammer is not an it, it's a she. So again, he can look at the bird and he can see that it's not just an object, that it's alive. It's a mother of these eggs. It's a she. And she is a poet. He is a poet. She is a poet again. And again we have brooks. We have flowers. Again really nice. And flowery weeds. Again, rudely planted flowery weeds. It's not a garden. It's not something that humans do. It's something that grows natural. They might be weeds to people, but they're still nice and flowery and beautiful, and they're as sweet as castily to fancy things. Oh, castily?
Well, there's something about a source of inspiration located in Casterly, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I don't know really. What I could find is that Casterly apparently was a nymph, but maybe he means something else. I don't know. Maybe he just likes Casterly. Maybe he just wants to show that he's cool and educated. That he may be in nature. He may be looking at the birds like a cowboy, but really he is educated, he's not stupid, he's not rude. So again, we connect realities here. You can know all about Greek culture and ancient culture and know all sorts of clever words, be a poet who is really clever, but at the same time you can enjoy nature. And then you connect it, and that old molehill, like as Parnassus Hill. So you look at the molehill, you see Parnass. The same as in the other poem, where he was trying to read some Homer, and he couldn't because there were ants. And he looked at the ants fighting, and that was more interesting than the story of Troy, if you remember. If you will remember. Oh, there was a really nice poem. So here again, real life and fantastic life or poetic life, the books come together. There's no difference. You would think, it's just an old molehill. Who is interested in an old molehill? There are thousands of them, hundreds, and it's old, it's not interesting. But he says, no, it's like the mountain of inspiration where poets live. Again, you're so tiny that a molehill looks like a whole mountain to you, and a holy mountain to you. And of course, molehill, moles live underground. So we have now all layers. We have underground, we have ground, and we have up, where the birds fly. So again, it's one of the ways of looking It's what the Chinese tradition again has. When you're looking at something like the moon or a flower or something, it's a whole art of looking, because you're not just looking at the moon or the plant. At the same time, you remember all sorts of poems and paintings and ideas and images and symbols. So when you look at the flower here, you're not only seeing the individual flower, which you do, but you also see the whole cloud of meanings around it. And then you really, really enjoy it. So maybe that's what he does here. He can combine the two realities. Maybe it's not really two realities, maybe it's the same reality. It just depends how you look at it. Because we have two eyes, and maybe you look with one eye and it's a molehill. You look with another eye and it's Parnas. But you look with both eyes and you have this amazing stereo picture. Oh, I've just discovered some stereo pictures where where you have two images and then you kind of cross your eyes and you have the third image in between, and it's really, really in stereo. That's really cool. Okay. On which her partner happily sits and dreams o'er all her joys of songs.
Well, now we have the partner.
Mm-hmm. We have the mother, who's a poet, who is singing. And we have the partner, the father. And we have babies, eggs. So we have a happy family here, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, joyful family.
Mm-hmm.
Because the partner is also concerned with songs and dreams.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that's what he is happy.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, happily means happily.
In this case, yeah. And he sits on the Parnassus hill. So he's a poet as well.
He's a poet as well, as he is inspired. That's why he dreams of all that sort of joys and songs, and that's again allows us to see it, as you say, from a human perspective. A happy family. This is probably not the way the birds see it, but at least that's the way we can. Well, yes, because that's the way we can understand it, and that's basically an idyllic picture. An idyllic picture that only becomes available to us because we stood down, we did take our time to look and sort of explore what was barely visible to us. And now we have this happy family and all those things. The songs that we hear, the birds that we see, and future birds exemplified by these 5 eggs. Yeah.
The more we look at, let's say, art and culture and poetry including, the more it does seem that the main question of whole humanity is paradise lost, and we are trying to regain it in any way we can. So here we find it literally beneath our feet, and not somewhere far away in a distant land, or far away in the sky, in the heavens, or far away in another reality where you can only get when you die. But it's here, it's just beneath your feet. If you care to look, if you care to stop and look, you'll find this little paradise. And like in any paradise, in the paradise before, we have happiness.
Snakes.
We have snakes, yeah. here they come, and it has to be balanced, because if you just have the great big happy side, it will explode you in the face. If you only have the tyrannic side, it's dark and heavy, that will explode in your face. But you must keep them balanced somehow, matter and antimatter, if you like. So leave it still, a happy home of sunshine, flowers and streams. So when we look at it, we don't want to stay and see what may happen. We capture the happy moment when they're all dreaming, singing, when it's harmless, when it's beautiful. But we know the potential. We know the potential because we live in the world after the paradise, so we already know what to expect. Even if we don't want to see it, even if we don't wait to see it, we know it may and probably will happen at some point. Yet in the sweetest places cometh ill, and noise and weed that burdens every soil. So again, we talk in kind of rural terms. We talk about weeds and soil. Yeah. For snakes are known with chill and deadly coil, to watch such nests and seize the helpless young. So if you trace the poem, then we have harmless in the beginning, but now it's helpless. Harmless and helpless. And snakes. So we introduce darkness, we introduce death, deadly coil, and we introduce cold with chill into the happy sunlit world, and that's the beauty of it. That's the contrast which makes it more alive. Yeah, he doesn't say it happens, but he says in general it happens. It is known to watch such nests.
Is he also saying that it is? Is he also saying that it happens because they are happy?
Yeah.
Because they are helpless. Because they are happy.
Yeah, it could be because then it builds a charge. Let's say a negative charge, which attracts the other side. Let's say the positive charge.
And maybe again, you can only be happy because you can experience full happiness until the moment you learn something about the snake. When you know that it's true. When you know that it's true that there coexist happiness and evil. When your world is not free, is not protected from snakes. In fact, you are helpless against a snake, and that's what makes you unhappy for the very first time.
Yeah. So there's that thing on one hand, which is security by obscurity. But if you're happy, you can't be obscure. Happiness has a great charge, and it's bound to attract the other side. And in some sense, it is good for you, so you don't have your head in the clouds. You do need to remain rooted and grounded. It's for your safety, in a sense. Okay. For snakes are known with chill and deadly coil, to watch such nests and seize the helpless young, and like as though the plague became a guest. So again, what can you do when there's a plague? Very little. It's again a snake or a plague, or who knows what may happen to you then maybe a snake will not come to your nest, but maybe something else will happen, who knows. Became a guest, leaving a houseless home, a ruined nest. So just in the previous bit, in the end, leave it still a happy home of sunshine, and now we turn it around and let's leave it a houseless home, a ruined nest. And mournful hath the little warbler sung, when such like wolves hath rent its little breast. So the song of happiness can really quickly become a song of grief and mourn.
Yeah.
And if you look at the poem again, at how it's composed, it's not different from any picture, painting. Again, we start with something more or less neutral. Then we have something light and happy. So all light, happy, neutral stays up here. And the heavy is down here, the last lines. And as they are heavy, they're much shorter. Yeah, they're much shorter. So they don't need to be long because they're heavy. And again, if you look at the picture, that's exactly how it works. You have a bright side up here, and you have dark colors at the bottom. So it's not different. It's the same idea. And what happens if we change the places? What happens if we start with in the sweetest places cometh ale, and there are snakes which eat little birds, and then we tell about how we may find a nest and look at it and leave it a happy place? Would it be a different poem? Would it leave a different impression?
Well, it might lack some kind of... we know that unless we are just eggs, newly born children, we as adults know that the world is not free from evil.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you deliberately choose to ignore that evil exists and only concentrate on this happy picture, you are not depicting things realistically, things as they are. Whereas here we see both sides of the issue. We see, as our friend Hegel says, we see the inner contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
That, and again, his idea is that you don't see clearly unless you see a contradiction, unless you see both sides that coexist and that cannot exist entirely on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So this makes it much more philosophical and truer to how things really are.
Mm-hmm. And if we just watch little birds and see them happy, how is it different from watching little birds and see them happy and know that any moment a snake may come and eat them?
Well, when we are watching little birds being happy,
which means, obviously, which means we watch ourselves being happy, just carelessly.
Yeah, and careless. Yeah, and again, there's, I don't know, if we try to be very, if I try to take an easy path, it of course is, the poem is of course a reminder to all of us how fleeting happiness really is. We're happy today, we don't know what's going to happen next day, but also the point number 2 that could be made out of this poem is that very often when you are happy, you are careless, you are ignorant of other people's unhappiness, and you can sometimes be rude to other people who are unhappy without even understanding that you say something harmful, you do something harmful, not because you mean ill, but because you are sort of
in another reality.
Careless in
So do the birds know, as in the second part, do the birds know as they sing happily, do they know that the snakes may come and eat their babies? It's a big question.
Probably they do. It's a big question. Probably they do, because we'll begin the poem by a bird who flies up, being scared by this harmless little cowboy. Then it also it means that the birds, however happy they might be, are aware of the danger.
And the snakes are known to do it. So the birds know. The birds know that any moment a snake may come, eat their babies. There's nothing they can do to stop it. They can save themselves because the snake wouldn't be really interested in them. But they will not be able to defend the nest. They will not be able to save the babies. They know it, they're aware of it, and still they can be happy, still they can be dreaming, still they can be singing. What does it tell us?
And again, some people who know much more about optimism than I do say that you can't be really optimistic unless you take all the ills of the world, all the woes of the world into consideration. So happiness and optimism that is based on ignorance is not genuine optimism. It's not genuine happiness. It is prone to destruction by something that.
Well, let's just say it's what they say about courage. So I guess optimism might be seen as a kind of courage. What they say is it doesn't count if you can't count. It means like if you're a baby, you can't count like 1, 2, 3, 10. Then if you're brave, it doesn't count because you don't have the experience to compare with. If you do have the experience and you still do it, if you know where you're going and you still do it, then you're brave, then you're really optimistic. So maybe these birds are really, truly brave and optimistic. Maybe that's, again, the birds are us. We are small, we are defenseless in the face of fate. If it's our fate, we can't change it. If it's going to come and take our what is the most dear to us, we can't change it. But it doesn't mean that we should be sitting, being gloomy and scared, like with the virus. If the virus is coming to you, then you can't avoid it. But it doesn't mean that you should be panicking and being scared to death and just killing yourself without any viruses. Yeah, it's all the same story. So if something comes to you, you face it. Like these birds, they may be crying, they may be really ruined, but they know, they're aware of it, they take it in consideration, apparently. And still, when there's time to be happy, they are happy. They're not wasting time on being unhappy and, oh no, I can't relax and sing. What if a snake comes? Well, if it comes, there's nothing you can do anyway. So don't worry, be happy.
Yeah. It's sort of humility, or lack of humility. So if you say, I can't do anything, it's up to the fate, and you might be a humble person. If you don't say, it's up to the fate to decide my fate.
You can decide, you can make your choice on how to face it. You may not be able to change what you're facing, but you can decide how you're facing it. That's a great difference. You do have your free will. And that's where it works, where you decide to panic or not to panic, to sing or not to sing, to dream or not to dream. Maybe if we look at it as an inner landscape, then there's always a part of us which is singing and dreaming, and there's also always a kind of a dark side, like a snake, which is inside us. But again, it's all a part of this nature, of this landscape. Okay, anything else here?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, what about rhyming? We have some nice rhyming. Some funny rhyming. Up, stop, down, drown, dread, bad, bang, crank, planned land, fair hair. So we have A, B, but then we have like AA in the middle. Then we have like shell, spells, reads somewhere. Shell, spells, dwells. We have 3 rhymes here. Reads, weeds, reeds and weeds here. Then seams and dreams, heel and still. Seams and dreams and streams. So the second part comes in 3, and the first part comes in 2, and the second part comes in 3s. Shell, spells, dwells, and seams, dreams, streams. Very interesting. So it's not regular, it's different. Ale, hill. Hill, still, and ill. That's also 3 parts. Soil, coil, young and sung, and then guest, nest, breast. So it's a very interesting pattern here. Again, a little bit like a nest, because it's not regular. It has different kinds of rhyme, like the nest has bleached stubbles and the withered fair, and horses' sable hair. Again, it goes naturally, it rhymes where it needs to rhyme. I think it's really nice. Okay, anything else?
No.
Okay, then we may finish.